Our next guest runs an online matchmaking business called Matchboard. It's all about putting Australians and their requests on their website to find the perfect match suppliers of different services as well. Demand dropping off a little bit, but things starting to come back as well. In fact, talking about reaping the rewards, we can tell you demand jumped in June alone last month, 48% compared to May. Here to talk to us about why, the reasons for that, Managing Director of Matchboard, Sharon Melamed. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first, we talk about Matchboard. Kind of sounds like a dating agency. Is that what it is, but for services?
Exactly. It's like B2B dating, a business matchmaking site, free to use. Every day we get Australian businesses jump on and put requests to try and find their perfect match suppliers of different services. So a few examples of that are digital marketing services, call center, training, consulting services. And we really position ourselves as an alternative to search engines, as you don't have to sift through millions of search results with our platform to find that supplier that's just right for you.
Interested in what the drop-off was. Would you say that's about COVID? We talk about how a lot of businesses and industries have been impacted as well. You're in that world where if businesses are impacted, you're going to be heavily impacted too. But what you've started to see is a real pickup as well. What does that tell you about the economy?
March, April, May was a shocker, and we recognised that most businesses just didn't have the money to spend, so there's no point selling hard to them. So we just focused on really being helpful at that time. But like you said, the good news story is that demand has jumped up. For us, jumped by 48% from May to June, which is, I think, a sure sign that things are recovering.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of businesses, they went into this not really knowing how long this would last for, how they would be impacted. Talk to us about what it was like for you, because I think it might have been the feeling for so many businesses out there, business owners out there, watching almost a slow motion car crash that happened overnight for many businesses.
Yeah, it really came on quite suddenly, I think, and everyone was just in survival mode. So we had a lot of conversations with the suppliers in our community, working out sort of brainstorming sessions. How can they pivot? How can they change their messaging, their offering? Because if we don't have a supplier community that's strong, at the end of the day, we don't have a business either. So it was very much we're all in this together attitude. And I think people will remember, how you behaved during this crisis, and were you one to step up and help, or were you one to sort of insist on your usual terms of payment and all that sort of thing. People really appreciated the flexibility we showed.
One of the key points we keep hearing about this is the so-called Vshaped resurgence as well. Is that what you're seeing in terms of demand? Is that how you describe it?
I guess it's early days, but the June results were just so pleasantly surprising, and I just hope that continues throughout July. I think there's a couple of factors though. June obviously being the end of the financial year, we always see a bit of a jump in demand on our website because people are planning to sort of do their research in June and press the button in July when
that is such
that
a great
budget.
point, isn't it? Which makes it very hard for you to describe whether this is a V-shaped recovery, because of course the V has happened at the end of the financial year, where a lot of people are of course buying services to try and bring down their tax, etc., start planning for the next year too. So it's very hard to determine whether there is something in place here or whether this just happens every June and May and July.
Yeah, well, the jump definitely was bigger than previous years, and
Right.
I put that down to one other factor, which is that everyone during that March, April, May period was really looking closely at their business and scrutinizing their expenses and their supplier arrangements. So I think in June, people have done that review. They're coming back to us now and saying, okay, we want better value for money with the suppliers that we have, or we want to see what else is out there. So I think there'll be a lot of switching going on with suppliers, as well as that new financial year effect.
What I find interesting though is a relationship, and you have a community, and when we talk about community, it really is about building a relationship with suppliers, for suppliers, to each other as well. How have you noticed that relationship change? Is it as strong as it was before? No one expected this when it actually hit the fan, did you notice that the community was as strong as what you had put in place?
Yeah, I think everyone showed their true colours during this crisis, and we have very strong relationships with their suppliers. And the ones that were suffering and bleeding, they, were the first to reach out to us to say, what can Matchboard do to help? And it was very interesting that we had some suppliers on the other end of the spectrum that were just experiencing a surge in demand, like some of the call centre providers who were really picking up the slack for all the ones in the Philippines and India that were under lockdown and couldn't provide services anymore. So suddenly all the companies in Australia were turning to the onshore providers. So we tried to match up the people that were downsizing with the people that were upscaling. And so I think we played quite an important role there.
Sharon, fantastic what you're doing. Great to see that things are on the up and in fact doing better than they were this time last year. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.